The message arrived on a cold morning in March. Captain Tae-sung Kim was drinking coffee in his small office when the screen on his desk lit up with urgent red letters. He set down his cup and read the words carefully. The Galactic Council wanted him. They wanted him now. Tae-sung was 38 years old and had seen more fights than he cared to remember. His face carried scars from the Rim Wars, thin white lines that crossed his left cheek. His hair was getting gray at the sides. He looked tired because he was tired, but when duty called, he always answered. The problem was simple but dangerous. The Vextari Empire had blocked 3 human colony worlds. Thousands of families could not get food or medicine. Children were going hungry. The Vextari said humans had crossed into their space. Humans said the borders were never clear to begin with. Now both sides were angry and ships with guns were gathering. The Galactic Council decided to force a meeting. They called it diplomacy. Tae-sung called it a disaster waiting to happen. The Vextari were 8 feet tall with armor-plated skin and claws that could cut through metal. They thought humans were weak and stupid. Every time humans tried to talk with them, the Vextari would threaten and insult until the humans gave up. But this time was different. This time Ambassador Ji-won Park asked for military protection. She was smart and brave, but she knew the Vextari might try something violent. She needed someone who could fight if things went wrong. She needed someone who understood how to bend rules without breaking them. She needed Tae-sung. He packed his bags and took a shuttle to the council station called Unity's Promise. It was a massive structure floating in neutral space, built by a dozen different alien species. It looked like a metal flower with arms reaching out in all directions. Inside were conference rooms and living quarters and security checkpoints everywhere. The security rules were very clear. No projectile weapons, no guns, no rifles, no anything that shot bullets. No energy weapons either. No lasers, no plasma rifles, no particle beams. No explosives. No grenades or missiles or anything that went boom. The list went on and on. Any technology that could kill someone from far away was completely banned. Tae-sung read the rules 3 times. He smiled. He spent 2 days preparing. He went to 7 different shops and called in favors from old friends. He visited a weapons dealer who asked no questions. He ordered custom leather straps and special pockets sewn into his uniform. He sharpened edges until they could split hair. He tested balance and weight and grip. When he was done, he owned 47 knives. There were big ones and small ones. Tactical combat knives with black handles. Throwing knives thin as fingers. Boot knives that fit into hidden sheaths. Machetes with curved blades. Folding knives that clicked open with one hand. Ceremonial daggers with decorated hilts. Survival knives with saw teeth on the back edge. 47 different blades. Not one of them was a projectile weapon. The day of the meeting arrived. Tae-sung put on his formal military uniform, dark blue with gold buttons and rank insignia on the shoulders. Then he started adding knives. 12 combat knives went into a chest harness under his jacket. 8 throwing knives slid into wrist sheaths. 6 boot knives disappeared into his tall boots. 4 machetes crossed his back in an X pattern. 9 folding knives went into various pockets. 3 ceremonial daggers hung from his belt. 5 survival knives attached to his thighs. He looked in the mirror. The knives did not show much under his jacket, but anyone who looked carefully could see the shapes and bulges. The hilts and handles created a pattern across his body. He looked like a man who took preparation very seriously. He walked through the station toward the security checkpoint. Other beings stared at him. There were insect-like aliens with too many legs. There were floating jellyfish creatures that glowed purple. There were reptile people with scales and cat people with fur. All of them stopped to watch the human in the military uniform walk past. At the security checkpoint, a mantis creature stood guard. It was green and had eyes like dinner plates. It gestured for Tae-sung to step through the scanner. These scanners were advanced technology, able to detect any weapon that used electronics or explosives or projectiles. They could find a gun in a lead box. They could spot a grenade in someone's stomach. Tae-sung stepped through, the scanner hummed. Lights flickered across his body. Then it went quiet. The mantis creature looked at the display screen. Its head tilted in confusion. It checked the screen again. It tapped the display with a long finger. No weapons detected, it said in a clicking voice. That is correct, Tae-sung said politely. You may pass. Tae-sung walked forward. As he moved, his jacket shifted. The mantis creature saw flashes of metal, hilts and handles and the gleam of blades. Its eyes went wide. Wait, it called out. What are you carrying? Taesung stopped and turned. "Knives," he said simply. "How many knives?" 47, the mantis creature stared. 47 knives? Yes, the regulations ban projectile weapons, energy weapons, and explosives. I read the rules very carefully. Knives are not mentioned. Taesung kept his voice calm and professional. I am in full compliance with all security protocols. The mantis creature did not know what to say. It checked its rule book. It called a supervisor. The supervisor was a four-armed creature with blue skin. It also checked the rules. Other guards gathered around. They whispered to each other in different languages. Finally, the blue supervisor spoke. Technically, you are correct. Plated weapons under certain sizes are permitted, but 47 seems excessive. The regulations do not specify a maximum number, Taesung replied. Only size and type restrictions. All of my knives fall within legal parameters. The supervisor's forearms gestured in frustration. Why would anyone need 47 knives? Taesung met its eyes. I could ask why anyone would ban weapons and then expect people to feel safe. I prefer to take responsibility for my own security. There was a long silence. Finally, the supervisor waved him through. You are cleared, but I am reporting this. I would expect nothing less, Taesung said. He nodded respectfully and continued walking. Behind him, he heard the guards talking in excited voices. Word would spread quickly. The human with 47 knives was in the station. Some would laugh. Some would be concerned. The Vextari would definitely hear about it. Good Taesung found the diplomatic quarters where Ambassador Ji-won was staying. He knocked on the door. She opened it and her eyes went wide when she saw him. Captain Kim, she said slowly. Why do you look like a walking armory? I am prepared for negotiations, Ambassador, he said with a slight smile. She pulled him inside quickly and closed the door. Are those all knives? How many are you carrying? 47. Ji-won put her hand over her face. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray streaks in her black hair. She had been a diplomat for 20 years and had negotiated with dozens of alien species. She had never seen anything like this. The Vextari are going to lose their minds, she said. Yes, Taesung agreed. That is the idea. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she started laughing. It was a tired, slightly crazy laugh. You know what? Fine. If we are going to have this disaster of a meeting, we might as well make it memorable. My thoughts exactly, Ambassador. Outside the window, the station's lights flickered as ships arrived. The Vextari delegation was approaching. Soon the negotiations would begin. Soon Taesung would walk into a room full of 8-foot-tall aliens who thought humans were beneath them. He adjusted his jacket and felt the weight of 47 knives against his body. He had not brought them to start a fight. He had brought them to make a point. Humans might not have the biggest guns or the best technology, but they had something else. They had the ability to look at any rule and find every possible way to work within it. They had creativity and stubbornness and a refusal to be intimidated. They had the courage to stand in a room full of predators and refuse to blink. Taesung touched the knife at his belt. It had belonged to his sister Yuna before she died fighting Vextari raiders. He had carried it through a dozen battles. Now he would carry it into one more fight, this time with words instead of bullets. The communications panel beeped. A voice announced that all delegations should report to the conference chamber in 1 hour. It was time. 2 hours before the negotiations were scheduled to begin, Ambassador Ji-won called a private meeting. The room was small and secure, with walls that blocked listening devices. 3 other humans sat around the table waiting. Taesung was the last to arrive. Dr. Hyunwoo Choi looked up from his datapad when Taesung entered. Hyunwoo was the team's alien psychology expert. He spent his life studying how different species thought and acted. He was thin and wore glasses that made his eyes look bigger. When he saw Taesung, his mouth fell open. Is that... he started to say. Yes, Ji-won interrupted. He is wearing 47 knives. Lieutenant Soo-min Lee was standing by the window. She was Taesung's aide and had worked with him for 5 years. She knew how he thought. When she saw his loaded uniform, she just nodded once. Clever, she said quietly. The third person in the room was from station security. His name was Krendar and he was not human. He looked like a large insect with a shell that shimmered green and gold. He had been assigned to observe the negotiations and make sure no violence broke out. His large eyes stared at Taesung with what might have been fascination. Captain Kim, Ji-won said, please explain your strategy to the team. Tae-sung unbuttoned his jacket. The knives became visible, strapped across his chest and sides. He turned slowly so everyone could see. The Vextari respect strength. They do not respect weakness or fear. Every previous negotiation failed because they intimidated our diplomats until we gave up. So your solution is to bring weapons? Hyunwoo asked. He did not sound convinced. My solution is to show that we cannot be intimidated, Tae-sung corrected. These knives are legal. I broke no rules. But they send a message. They say that humans think ahead, that we prepare, that we find solutions others do not see. Hyunwoo adjusted his glasses and thought about this. The Vextari are pack hunters in their evolutionary history. In their culture, showing you are ready to fight can earn respect. But it can also provoke aggression. I am counting on it, Tae-sung said. Sumin spoke from the window. The Vextari delegation arrived 30 minutes ago. Their flagship is enormous. They brought twice as many ships as they needed. They want us to feel small. How many guards are they bringing to the negotiation? Jiwon asked. 6 armed guards plus their ambassador and his second-in-command. And we have Captain Kim with 47 knives. Jiwon smiled slightly. I wish I could see their faces. Krendar made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Word has already spread through the station. Every delegation knows about the human with many blades. Some think it is humor. Others think it is madness. The Vextari think it is an insult. Good, Tae-sung said. Let them be angry. Angry people make mistakes. Hyunwoo pulled up files on his datapad. I have been studying the Vextari ambassador. His name is Thexval. He is not military. He is a political appointment, which means he has to prove himself to the warrior class. He will be aggressive and demanding to show strength. What about his second? Jiwon asked. Commander Ralvik. He is very different. Pure military background. Fought in 17 battles. The soldiers respect him greatly. If we had to negotiate with anyone, he would be better than Thexval. Tae-sung filed this information away. It might be useful later. Sumin turned from the window. Captain, can I ask a question? Why exactly 47? Why not 40 or 50? Tae-sung had been waiting for someone to ask this. Because 46 felt like not enough. And 48 seemed excessive. But mainly because I wanted people to count. I wanted them to look at me and think about each individual blade. Every knife represents preparation and thought. It makes them wonder what else we have planned. Psychological warfare, Hyunwoo said, nodding slowly. You are fighting before the fight begins. Exactly. Jiwon stood up. All right. Here is how this will work. I will lead the negotiation. Captain Kim will stand behind me, silent unless absolutely necessary. Sumin will manage communications with our fleet. Hyunwoo will observe and advise on Vextari behavior. We have one goal. Get them to lift the blockade. Everything else is secondary. Everyone nodded. And Captain, Jiwon added, try not to start a war with those knives. I make no promises. Ambassador. They left the secure room and walked through the station corridors toward the main council chamber. Other aliens stopped to stare as they passed. A group of floating jellyfish creatures backed away nervously. Some reptile diplomats whispered to each other and pointed. A small furry alien actually took a picture. Tae-sung kept his expression neutral and his posture military straight. Every step was measured. Every movement was controlled. He wanted to project confidence and capability. He wanted them to see a warrior who was completely comfortable being surrounded by potential enemies. They reached the council chamber entrance. 2 large doors stood closed, made of some kind of white metal that gleamed under the lights. 4 guards stood watch, 2 on each side. They were from different species that Tae-sung did not recognize. One guard held up a hand. Weapons must be registered before entry. Tae-sung stepped forward. I have already passed security screening. All my equipment is legal. Yes, but we must document what you carry for the official record. Very well. Tae-sung began listing them. 12 tactical combat knives grade 4 steel. 8 throwing knives balanced for accuracy. 6 boot knives, 4-inch blades. 4 machetes, high-carbon steel with 18-inch blades. 9 folding knives, various sizes. 3 ceremonial daggers with decorated hilts. 5 survival knives with sawtooth backs. The guard was writing quickly on a data pad. That is 47 total? Correct. And you intend to bring all of them into the negotiation chamber? I do. The guard looked at his companion. They seemed unsure. Finally, the first guard spoke again. Normally, we would ask you to leave weapons here. Normally people bring projectile weapons which are illegal, Tae-sung replied. I brought legal equipment. If you want me to leave it, I will need to see the specific regulation that requires it. There was a long pause. The guard checked his pad. There is no such regulation. Then I will keep my equipment. Thank you. The doors opened. The council chamber was huge. The ceiling was high and curved, made of glass that showed the stars outside. The table in the center was circular, a symbol that all species were equal here. Chairs of different sizes surrounded it, designed for different body types. Lighting came from floating orbs that drifted through the air, but Tae-sung barely noticed the room. His attention went immediately to the Vextari delegation on the opposite side. They were massive. Even sitting down, they towered over the human delegation. Their skin looked like dark gray stone with plates of natural armor across their shoulders and backs. Their faces were elongated with strong jaws and sharp teeth visible when they spoke. Their hands ended in claws that could easily tear through flesh. They wore uniforms of deep red with silver symbols. Ambassador Thexavol sat in the center. He was the largest of them, with scars across his face and arms. His eyes were yellow and cold. When he saw the human delegation enter, those eyes narrowed. Commander Ralvik sat to his right. He was slightly smaller but looked more dangerous somehow. His movements were controlled and precise. His eyes missed nothing. When he saw Tae-sung, he went very still. The 6 Vextari guards stood behind their leaders, each one armed with shock batons that were technically legal under council rules. They looked at Tae-sung and his knives. Confusion crossed their faces, then something else. Wariness, perhaps. The human delegation took their seats. Ji-won sat at the table. Hyunwoo sat beside her. Sumin stood to one side with her communication equipment. Tae-sung stood directly behind Ji-won, feet shoulder-width apart, hands relaxed at his sides. A neutral mediator from the council staff began speaking. It was a tall, thin alien with blue skin and no hair. It explained the rules of negotiation in a boring voice. No violence. No threats. All parties must negotiate in good faith. Everyone had already heard this 100 times, but Tae-sung was not listening to the mediator. He was watching the Vextari. Specifically, he was watching how they looked at him. Thexvol stared with obvious anger. The guard seemed nervous, but Ralvik watched with what looked like interest. The mediator finished its speech. Ambassador Thexvol, you may present your opening position. Thexvol stood up. He rose to his full height, over 8 feet tall. It was a dominance display, meant to intimidate. Humans have violated Vextari territory 17 times in the past year. This is unacceptable. You are young species new to the galaxy. You do not understand proper behavior. Ji-won remained seated. Her voice was calm. The borders in that region were never clearly established. We propose joint surveying to create accurate maps that both species can accept. We do not need your proposals, Thexvol growled. We need your obedience. You will withdraw from 12 disputed systems. You will pay reparations. You will acknowledge Vextari superiority in this sector. Those terms are impossible, Ji-won said firmly. Thexavol slammed his fist on the table. The sound echoed through the chamber. Then your colonies will remain blockaded until you learn respect. In the silence that followed, Tae-sung moved. It was not a big movement. He simply shifted his weight slightly and rested his hand on the hilt of one of the ceremonial daggers at his belt. The movement was casual, almost absent-minded. The negotiation continued, and it got worse before it got better. Ambassador Thexavol refused to listen to any compromise. Every time Ji-won proposed a solution, he dismissed it with contempt. He spoke over her. He insulted human intelligence. He made threats disguised as warnings. Your colonies are weak, he said at one point. Your ships are inferior. If you force conflict, you will lose. Ji-won kept her voice level, though Tae-sung could see the tension in her shoulders. We are not threatening conflict. We are asking for fair negotiation. There is nothing to negotiate. Thexavol roared. You invaded our space. You must pay the price. One of the Vextari guards moved forward aggressively, stepping closer to the human side of the table. It was a deliberate act of intimidation. Tae-sung responded immediately. He pulled one of the boot knives from its sheath, not in a threatening way, just casually examining the blade as if checking its edge. The light caught the steel and made it shine. The guard stopped moving, his eyes fixed on the knife. Tae-sung tilted the blade slightly, studying it with professional interest. Then he slid it back into the sheath. The message was sent. The guard retreated. Hyunwoo leaned close to Jiwon and whispered. Taesung could barely hear him. It is working. Watch their body language. They are reassessing, it was true. The Vextari were pack hunters by nature, which meant they constantly evaluated threats. Before Taesung arrived, they saw the humans as prey, weak and frightened. But now their ancient instincts were triggering different responses. They were seeing potential danger. They were seeing a creature that might bite back. Commander Ralvik had not spoken yet. He sat quietly watching everything with sharp eyes. He watched Taesung most of all. There was no anger in his gaze, only calculation. He was measuring and judging. The neutral mediator tried to guide the discussion back to productive topics. Perhaps we can discuss the specific border coordinates in question. There is nothing to discuss, Thexval repeated. Humans will obey or suffer consequences. Jiwon finally showed a flash of anger. Ambassador Thexval, we came here in good faith. If you refuse to negotiate, we will have no choice but to what? Thexval interrupted. He stood again, looming over the table. To fight? With your small ships and weak weapons? He laughed, a harsh barking sound. You humans are amusing. You think you are strong because you survived a few battles, but you are insects compared to the Vextari Empire. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. The other Vextari guards were standing now, hands on their shock batons. The neutral mediator looked nervous. Sumin had her hand on her communication device ready to call for help. Taesung had been silent for over an hour. He had stood perfectly still, only moving to touch different knives when the Vextari made aggressive gestures. Now for the first time he spoke. Ambassador Thexval, his voice was quiet but clear. I have been counting. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at him. Thexval's eyes narrowed. Counting what, human? I have been counting the number of ways this conversation could go wrong. Taesung's hand moved to rest on one of the machete hilts on his back. I counted 47 different scenarios. Interestingly, I brought exactly one tool for each scenario. His eyes met Thexval's directly. Would you like me to demonstrate my diplomatic skills? Taesung did not move. He did not draw any weapon. He did not threaten or gesture. He simply stood there, his hand on a machete hilt, making eye contact with an 8-foot alien warrior. And he did not look away. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Then Thexval did something unexpected. He sat down. Slowly. His expression was still angry, but there was something else there too. Uncertainty, perhaps, or a new understanding that the small human in front of him was not afraid to die. Commander Ralvik was watching this exchange with intense focus. A small expression crossed his face. It might have been respect. The neutral mediator cleared its throat nervously. Perhaps we should take a short recess. 10 minutes to collect ourselves. Agreed, Jiwon said quickly. The Vextari delegation stood and left through one door. The humans went through another. As soon as they were in the private hallway, Jiwon grabbed Taesung's arm. That was extremely dangerous, she hissed. You almost started a fight. No, Taesung said calmly. I prevented one. Thexval was escalating. He would have kept pushing until violence became inevitable. I showed him there was a line he should not cross. Hyunwoo was nodding excitedly. He is right. Did you see how the Vextari reacted? Their pupils dilated. Their shoulder plates raised slightly. Those are threat recognition responses. The captain triggered their prey drive warning systems. So they see us as threats now? Sumin asked. Not threats exactly, Hyunwoo explained. More like equals. Dangerous equals. In Vextari pack dynamics, that is crucial. They only negotiate seriously with those they respect. Before they saw us as weak. Now they see us as potentially costly to fight. Jiwon took a deep breath. All right. But we need to be careful. Push too hard and they might decide to fight just to prove dominance. I understand, Taesung said. I will follow your lead, Ambassador. They returned to the chamber after 10 minutes. The Vextari were already seated. Taesung noticed that Commander Ralvik had moved to a different position. He was now directly across from Taesung instead of sitting beside Thexval. It was a subtle change but significant. Ralvik wanted to observe the human warrior more closely. The negotiation resumed. This time Thexval was less aggressive. He still made demands, but his voice was lower. He did not pound the table. When Jiwon presented counter-proposals, he actually listened before refusing. It was progress, but very slow progress. Hours passed. They discussed border coordinates and trade routes and historical grievances. Jiwan was patient and persistent. Every time Thexval made an extreme demand, she offered a reasonable alternative. Every time he insulted humanity, she calmly stated facts about human capabilities. And through it all, Tae-sung stood silent. But his presence had an effect. Whenever a Vextari guard moved aggressively, Tae-sung would touch a different knife. When Thexval raised his voice, Tae-sung would shift his weight, making the blades on his belt click softly together. He was conducting a shadow conversation with his body language, always reminding them he was there, always prepared. The neutral observers from other species were taking notes furiously. Krendar, the insect-like security officer, had not stopped watching Tae-sung. At one point, he leaned over to another observer and whispered something. They both looked at Tae-sung with expressions that might have been admiration. Finally, after 4 hours of negotiation, they reached a small breakthrough. Thexval agreed to allow medical supplies through the blockade while negotiations continued. It was not much, but it meant children on the colonies could get medicine. It meant people would not die while politicians argued. "This is acceptable as a first step," Jiwan said carefully. "Do not mistake mercy for weakness," Thexval warned. "We are still in control of the situation." "Of course," Jiwan replied diplomatically, but everyone in the room knew the truth. The power dynamic had shifted. The Vextari had come expecting to dominate. Instead, they found humans who refused to be intimidated. They found a warrior who carried 47 knives and looked ready to use every one of them. As the session ended, Commander Ralvik stood. He looked directly at Tae-sung and made a gesture with his clawed hand. It was a Vextari military salute, one warrior acknowledging another. Tae-sung returned the gesture with a human military salute. Brief, respectful. Thexval saw this exchange and his face darkened with anger. But he said nothing. The Vextari delegation left the chamber. "That was unexpected," Jiwan said quietly. "Ralvik is different from his ambassador," Hyunwoo observed. "He respects combat ability." He recognized what Captain Kim was doing. Sumin checked her communication device. "I am getting reports from other delegations. The Vextari military attaché has been asking questions about Captain Kim. They want to know his combat history." "Let them ask," Tae-sung said. "Let them learn that humans have been fighting and surviving for thousands of years. Let them learn we do not give up." They walked back to their quarters. Other aliens in the corridors gave them more space now. Word had spread about what happened in the negotiation. The human who brought 47 knives had faced down Ambassador Thexval and made him blink first. In their secure room, Jiwan poured herself a drink. "We made progress today. Not much, but some. The blockade will partially lift. That is worth celebrating." "It is a start," Tae-sung agreed. Hyunwoo was studying his datapad. "I am analyzing the Vextari responses. There is something interesting." Commander Ralvik responded very differently than Thexval to the captain's displays. Where Thexval showed anger, Ralvik showed interest. "What does that mean?" Sumin asked. "It means there might be a division in their delegation. The political leader versus the military commander. That could be useful." Tae-sung moved to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3 human colony worlds were waiting. Families were hoping for good news. Children were asking when they could eat properly again. He touched the knife at his belt, the one that had belonged to his sister Yuna. She had died fighting Vextari raiders 5 years ago. She had been brave and strong and refused to surrender even. The next morning arrived too quickly. Tae-sung had not slept well. He kept thinking about Commander Ralvik's request for a private meeting. It made no sense according to normal Vextari behavior. They did not seek private conversations with enemies. They certainly did not request meetings with lower-ranking officers while bypassing ambassadors. Something was happening that he did not understand yet. Jiwan called an emergency strategy session at dawn. The same group gathered in the secure room. Everyone looked tired. Hyunwoo had dark circles under his eyes from staying up late researching Vextari military customs. Sumin was drinking her 3rd cup of coffee. Even Krendar, the insect observer, had been invited to attend. "This meeting request is highly irregular," Hyunwoo said, scrolling through his data. "In Vextari culture, Military commanders do not meet privately with enemy officers during active negotiations. It could be seen as undermining the political leadership. Which means Ralvik is risking something, Jiwan observed. The question is why? Krendar clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. I have observed many negotiations between species. Sometimes the official position and the actual situation are not the same. Sometimes those who must enforce decisions disagree with those who make decisions. You think there is conflict in the Vextari delegation? Suman asked. I think Commander Ralvik is a warrior who respects warriors, and I think he saw something yesterday that interested him. Everyone looked at Tae-sung. He was checking his knives methodically, making sure each blade was sharp and each sheath was secure. It was his morning ritual, something that kept his mind focused. I will attend the meeting, he said simply. It could be a trap, Jiwon warned. They could kill you and claim it was self-defense. They could try, Tae-sung replied without looking up from his blade inspection. But I will be armed, and I will be careful. I want Sumin to monitor from outside, Jiwon decided. Keep a communication line open. If anything goes wrong, we call for help immediately. Agreed, Tae-sung said. 2 hours later, he stood outside a small conference room in a quiet section of the station. This area was used for unofficial meetings, conversations that were not recorded in official transcripts. The walls here were thick and soundproof. Sumin stood 20 meters away pretending to read something on her datapad, but actually watching the door. She gave Tae-sung a small nod. Ready? Tae-sung checked his weapons one last time. He had not brought all 47 knives today. That would have been excessive for a private meeting. Instead, he carried only the most important ones. 12 combat knives under his jacket, his sister's folding knife in his pocket, and 3 blades at his belt where they could be seen easily. He knocked on the door. Enter, a deep voice called from inside. The room was small with a single round table and 2 chairs. Commander Ralvik stood waiting. He was alone, no guards, no witnesses. He wore his military uniform but no weapons except his natural claws. Up close, Ralvik was even more imposing. His armored skin looked like gray stone with darker patches where old scars had healed. His eyes were sharp and intelligent. When he looked at Tae-sung, there was no hostility in his gaze. Only curiosity, Captain Kim, Ralvik said in careful human language. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Tae-sung sat but kept his posture alert. Why did you ask to meet, Commander? Ralvik sat across from him. The chair creaked under his weight. Because yesterday you did something interesting. You made my ambassador sit down without saying anything except one sentence. That requires skill. I simply stated facts. No, Ralvik corrected. You made a threat without making a threat. You showed readiness without showing aggression. In Vextari culture, this is considered high warrior art. Very few can do it successfully. Tae-sung said nothing, waiting to see where this conversation was going. Ralvik leaned forward slightly. I must be honest with you, Captain. This blockade is wrong. It dishonors Vextari military tradition. We are warriors, not politicians who starve children to make points. This was unexpected. Tae-sung kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing. If you believe the blockade is wrong, why do you enforce it? Because I follow orders. That is what soldiers do. But there are ways to follow orders and still maintain honor. Ralvik's clawed hand tapped the table once. Tell me, Captain, how did you know exactly what to do yesterday? I studied your culture. I learned that Vextari respects strength and preparation, so I made sure you could see both. The 47 knives. Everyone is talking about them. Some think it is joke. Others think it is insult. But I think it is message. What message do you think it sends? Tae-sung asked. That humans are not afraid. That humans plan ahead. That humans will find ways to fight even when rules say they cannot. Ralvik made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are trickster warriors. You look at rules and find spaces between the words. We prefer to think of it as being creative. In Vextari tradition there is ancient custom. When negotiations fail, warriors can settle disputes through formal combat. One warrior from each side. To first blood or surrender, not death. The winner's side gains position in negotiation. Tae-sung felt his heart beat faster. This was where the conversation had been leading. You want to challenge me to a duel? Yes, but understand this is not about hatred. This is about honor. Thexval has put me in an impossible position. He demands I enforce blockade that makes us look like cowards who attack civilians. But if I refuse orders, I am traitor. A formal duel gives different path. Explain. Ralvik spoke carefully, choosing his words with precision. If you defeat me in honorable combat, Vextari military will recognize human strength. It will give our warriors reason to pressure politicians for better terms. Thexvol will lose face among those who matter. New negotiations will be possible. And if you defeat me, then humans acknowledge Vextari superiority and accept our terms. The blockade ends, but you lose contested territory. Taisung considered this. It was risky, possibly very risky, but it was also an opportunity. Why are you offering this? What do you gain? Ralvik met his eyes directly. I gain honor. Whether I win or lose, I will have fought a worthy opponent in fair combat. That is better than enforcing unjust blockade against helpless civilians. I am warrior, Captain. I want to fight warriors, not starve children. There was sincerity in his voice. Taesung believed him, though he remained cautious. I need to discuss this with my ambassador. Of course. But decide quickly. Thexvol becomes more aggressive each day. Soon there may be violence that no one can control. Taesung stood. I will have an answer by tonight. That is acceptable. Ralvik stood as well. Captain Kim, may I ask you something personal? You may ask. Why 47 knives? There is specific reason, yes? Taesung thought about lying or deflecting. Instead, he told the truth. 46 felt insufficient. 48 felt excessive. But mainly I wanted people to count them. I wanted everyone who saw me to think about each individual blade, to realize that every knife represented thought and preparation, to understand that humans do not do anything carelessly. Ralvik nodded slowly. This is warrior wisdom. You fight with mind before body. I respect this. Thank you, Commander. As Taesung left the room, his mind was already working through implications. Sumin fell into step beside him as they walked back toward their quarters. Well? She asked quietly. What did he want? He wants to fight me. Sumin stopped walking. What? Formal duel? Vextari tradition. Winner's side gains negotiating advantage. That's insane. He is twice your size with natural weapons. He would kill you. Possibly, Taesung admitted. But it might be our best chance to end the blockade. They reached the secure room where Jiwon and Hyunwoo were waiting anxiously. Taesung explained everything Ralvik had said. Jiwon's face went pale. Hyunwoo immediately started searching his database for information on Vextari duel customs. Absolutely not, Jiwon said firmly. This is too dangerous. We will find another way. What other way? Taesung asked. Thexvol refuses to negotiate seriously. Every day we delay, people suffer. This gives us a real chance. Hyunwoo looked up from his datapad. Vextari dueling tradition is very formal. There are strict rules. No killing is allowed, only fighting until one side surrenders or is clearly defeated. The duel must be witnessed by neutral observers. Both fighters are considered honorable regardless of outcome. That does not make it safe, Jiwon argued. Ralvik has military training and natural advantages. He is larger, stronger, has armor plating and claws. But I am faster, Taesung said, and I have been studying Vextari combat patterns. They rely on strength and direct attacks. They are not used to opponents who use misdirection and environmental awareness. You are gambling with your, life. I gambled with my life every day during the Rim Wars. This is no different. Jiwon looked at him for a long moment. Her expression was pained. Yuna would not want you to do this. The mention of his sister made Taesung pause. Yuna had been brave to the point of recklessness. She had charged into impossible situations to save others. She had died because she refused to abandon civilians under attack. Yuna would understand, he said quietly. She always put mission before personal safety. This is the mission, Sumin spoke up. If you are going to do this, we should prepare properly. Study Vextari physiology, find weak points. The duel arena had been prepared in one of the station's large cargo holds. The space was empty except for a circular platform 20 meters across. Lights shone down from above, casting sharp shadows. Around the platform, hundreds of beings from dozens of species had gathered to watch. Word had spread through the station. The human with 47 knives was going to fight a Vextari commander. Taesung stood in a small preparation room, checking his 3 chosen blades for the final time. The tactical combat knife hung at his left hip. The heavy machete was strapped across his back. Yuna's folding knife rested in his right pocket, small and hidden but close to his heart. Jiwon stood nearby, her face tight with worry. You can still back out. No one would blame you. I would blame me, Taesung replied. He rolled his shoulders, loosening muscles. And those children on the blockaded colonies would blame me too, even if they never knew my name. Sumin entered with her communication gear. I have been monitoring Vextari transmissions. Their military channels are very active. Many warriors are watching this fight. They are excited. Of course they are, Hyunwoo said. He had not stopped researching since Taesung accepted the challenge. This is the first formal duel between Vextari and human. It will set precedent for how they view us. If you show cowardice, they will never respect humanity. If you show courage, even in defeat, you earn honor in their eyes. I do not plan to lose, Taesung said quietly. Ralvik has 40 years of combat experience, Jiwon reminded him. He has fought in 17 major battles. And I have 47 knives worth of preparation. Taesung smiled slightly. Today I brought 3, but the mind that planned for 47 scenarios is still here. A chime sounded. It was time. They walked out to the arena. The crowd noise was overwhelming. Clicking, buzzing, roaring, whistling. Every alien species had a different way of showing excitement. Taesung blocked it out and focused on his breathing. Slow, steady, calm. He climbed onto the platform. The surface was smooth metal with slight texture for grip. Good. He tested his footing, checking for slippery spots or uneven areas. Always know your battlefield. On the opposite side, Commander Ralvik emerged from the Vextari preparation room. He wore minimal armor, just enough to be modest by his culture's standards. His natural plate skin was his real protection. His claws gleamed under the lights, each one as long as a human finger and sharp enough to cut steel. In the center of the platform stood 3 neutral observers. One was Krendar, the insect security officer. The second was a floating jellyfish creature that glowed soft blue. The third was something that looked like a collection of crystals arranged in a vaguely humanoid shape. Krendar spoke in a voice amplified to reach the entire arena. This is formal combat under ancient Vextari warrior tradition. The rules are simple. Fight until first blood, clear defeat, or surrender. No killing strikes. No weapons except those declared. 3 neutral observers will judge the outcome. Both warriors have agreed to accept the result. The crystal being spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Captain Taesung Kim of humanity has chosen 3 blade weapons. Commander Ralvik of the Vextari Empire fights with natural weapons only. Are both warriors ready? Ready, Ralvik said. Ready, Taesung confirmed. Then begin. Ralvik moved first. He was faster than Taesung expected, crossing half the platform in 3 strides. His clawed hand swept in a wide arc aimed at Taesung's chest. It was a testing strike, meant to measure response time and defensive technique. Taesung ducked under the swing and rolled sideways, coming up with a tactical knife in his hand. He did not counterattack yet. First, he needed to observe. He needed to understand Ralvik's fighting style. The Vextari commander pressed forward with a combination of claw strikes, each one powerful enough to tear through light armor. But Taesung was not there when the strikes landed. He moved constantly, never staying in one place, always shifting angles and distance. The crowd was roaring now. The Vextari in the audience were shouting encouragement to their commander. Other species were watching with fascination. This was not just a fight. This was a test of 2 different philosophies of combat. Ralvik relied on strength and straightforward attacks. His strikes were powerful and precise. If any of them connected solidly, the fight would end immediately. His style was the way of the apex predator, dominating through superior physical capability. Taesung represented something different. He was smaller, weaker, with no natural weapons, but he had adaptability. He had thousands of years of human martial tradition that taught how to defeat larger, stronger opponents. He had the knife-fighting techniques of 7 different Earth cultures flowing through his movements. After 2 minutes of pure defense, Taesung understood Ralvik's patterns. The commander favored his right side slightly. His left claw led most combinations, but the right claw delivered the power strikes. There was a tiny delay when he shifted from high to low attacks. And most importantly, he fought like someone used to facing similar opponents. He expected strength against strength. Time to show him something different. Taesung stopped retreating. When Ralvik's next strike came, instead of dodging away, Taesung moved into it. He slipped inside the reach of those deadly claws and scored a shallow cut across Ralvik's arm with his tactical knife. First blood to the human. The crowd exploded with noise. Ralvik looked at the cut on his arm. Dark blue blood welled from the shallow wound. His eyes met Taesung's and there was something new in them. Respect and increased focus. You are faster than you look, human. And you are exactly as dangerous as you look, Commander. Which is very dangerous. They circled each other. Ralvik was more cautious now, respecting Taesung's speed. He changed tactics, using feints and misdirection. He was adapting, learning from the first exchange. Good. Taesung wanted an opponent who learned. It made the fight more interesting. They engaged again. This time both landed hits. Ralvik's claw caught Taesung's shoulder, tearing through his uniform and leaving 3 shallow cuts. Pain flared, but Taesung ignored it. In return, his knife found the softer tissue under Ralvik's arm where the natural armor was thinner. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Both bleeding, both realizing this would not be an easy victory for either side. You fight well for someone so small, Ralvik said. Size matters less than people think, Taesung replied. Ask any human soldier. We have been proving that for centuries. The fight continued. Minutes passed. Both warriors landed hits. Both took damage. Taesung's uniform was torn in several places and he was bleeding from multiple cuts. But Ralvik was also marked with precise knife wounds, each one placed to teach a lesson. Humans could find weak points, humans could adapt. Humans could hurt you even when outmatched. Then Taesung made a decision. He was not going to win through attrition. Ralvik had more stamina and could take more damage. To win, Taesung needed to do something unexpected, something that would prove the point this entire demonstration was meant to prove. He dropped the machete. It clanged on the metal platform. The crowd went silent. Even Ralvik stopped, confused. What are you doing? Showing you what humans are made of. Taesung drew Yuna's small folding knife, the smallest blade he had brought. We do not need the biggest weapon. We need the right weapon, used the right way at the right time. He could feel Ji-won's horror from the observation area. This was insane. He had just given up his most powerful weapon against an opponent who outweighed him by 100 pounds. But Taesung understood something that others did not. This fight was never just about winning. It was about respect. It was about showing the Vextari what humanity represented. And humanity represented the ability to succeed despite disadvantages through creativity and determination. Ralvik's eyes narrowed. You mock me by fighting with such a small blade? No, Commander. I honor you by showing my true skill. Taesung shifted his stance. In human knife fighting, size means nothing. Precision means everything. They engaged again. Now the fight changed completely. Taesung was no longer trying to wound Ralvik seriously. Instead, he demonstrated technique. He showed blocks and parries that redirected the Vextari's clawed strikes. He showed footwork that created angles impossible to defend. He showed strikes to nerve clusters and pressure points that made Ralvik's limbs go momentarily weak. He was teaching. In the middle of combat, he was showing the Vextari commander the depth of human martial knowledge. Ralvik began to understand. His expression changed from aggression to something else. Wonder, perhaps? He started testing different approaches, curious to see how Taesung would respond. The fight became less about winning and more about learning. Finally, Taesung saw his moment. Ralvik overextended slightly on a claw strike. Taesung moved inside, his small knife finding the gap in the armor plates at the Vextari's neck. The blade stopped 1 millimeter from the artery. They froze in that position. I could end this, Taesung said quietly, just loud enough for Ralvik to hear. But killing you would be easy. Earning your respect is harder. I prefer the harder path. He stepped back and lowered his knife. I yield. The arena went completely silent. No one could believe what they just heard. Taesung had the winning position. One thrust and Ralvik would have been forced to surrender or die. Instead, Taesung yielded.